So I hail really, truly from University of Northern British Columbia, and let's just play this. Yay, okay. And I took a 2-year sabbatical of sorts to come to the Middle East, and I was right in the middle of the project of developing our ETD program at UMBC when I ventured off with my family to the hot desert of the Arabian Peninsula. And so I'm excited to go back here in late August to UMBC and see where they've gone with the ETD program. And if nowhere, then we'll take it from there. But while I was at AUS, I did this small survey. The survey really looked at American International Consortium of Academic Libraries, which is really very tiny. It's just 25 American accredited international universities spread across Europe, the Middle East, a couple in Africa, and Asia. Now, these institutions deliver American model education and meet accredited standards set by legitimate American accrediting bodies. So, for example, American University of Sharjah is accredited by the United States Commission on Higher Education of the Middle States Association of College and Schools. I can't imagine that acronym. But if any of you are accredited there, that's a mouthful. The institutions may or may not have funding or even formal ties to any particular institution in the United States, but generally their faculty are from North America or Western Europe and are trained out of the United States. So these are American institutions, and they run on that model. Now, the size of the institutions also varies greatly. We have institutions in this consortium that are really students' population in the hundreds, and other institutions that have 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 students. So it's a bit of a grab bag, and I was really interested in, considering the ETD push in the United States, how ETDs and ETD programs were being developed in these American schools abroad. So I did a small survey of these 25 institutions. And I broke that survey into 4 categories, just a little bit to find out a little bit about the library and the graduate programs that they offered. I asked them about their collections, the size, the type, what they had in print, and etc. I asked them about their management practices for ETDs, and then also how they were disseminating and what the accessibility of their ETD collections were like. So I'll talk a little bit about what I found from this survey, and I won't try to bore you with huge numbers. This is a really small set, but it gives a bit of a window, I think. This image actually is from the main building of the American University of Sharjah. It doesn't look like a desert. I think they pour just about the entire Gulf onto this place to make it green, but it's quite lovely. I should say 24 of 25 institutions responded. The one that did not respond, I was able to find out that they actually don't have graduate programs. So that was fine. And 6 of these, actually it turned out, 6 MacDonald institutions do not offer graduate programs, so we're really looking at 19. Some of these institutions are in places like Iraq and Afghanistan, and so you can understand some of the problems that they might have in developing even graduate programs, let alone an ETD program. 9 institutions only. 9 institutions out of these 25 have an ETD program. 7 institutions are right now in the midst of developing their ETD programs for the first time. And 3 institutions have no plans whatsoever to develop an ETD program. And I had asked for comments about, if they said, we're not developing one, I wanted to know why. And generally it was institutional priorities. They'd asked, it's generally the library asking, let's get this started, and administration has basically said no at this point, so things are just not moving forward. I think it's troubling that a little over half of these institutions don't yet have ETD programs, but I think it's encouraging that there's a lot of movement towards getting those. 7 of these are, I think within the next year or 2, we're going to see almost all of these institutions having a program. So a little bit more about these institutions. They range from institutions like the American University of Beirut, which is the large picture here, beautiful institution in Lebanon with 7,000 students and a very large thesis collection that's an institution that's well over 100 years old, to institutions like the American University of Paris, who produce about 40 ETDs a year and have only a couple hundred students. So deep history, yes, and also very, very youthful in some respects. So collections, what did I learn? Well, there's only, and I imagine that there are some in this building that have collections that are larger than this in just their institution, and that is 25,000 theses and dissertations across all of these institutions. And I'll point out that the American University of Beirut and the American University of Cairo account for 20,000 of those 25,000 theses and dissertations. About half of that 25,000 are electronic theses and dissertations. The other half are generally those yet to be digitized. So AUB has not gone through a digitization process, for example. But this collection is growing by nearly 1,000 a year. And I think will continue to gain momentum as time goes on. So we're really in an infancy, but it's going to get big fast. And I will point out also that they don't handle, at this point, just about, I think there was one institution that handles supplemental files. So truly, these are simply PDF files, the print moved into the electronic format. All right, so what are they doing to manage these collections, those 9 institutions? Well, DSpace is the repository of choice for these institutions. 5 out of 9 of them use DSpace. But AUP is doing something quite unique. American University of Paris is actually using eBrewery to host their ETDs. And others, the rest, are simply using just FTPing to some server space and then creating links for those and throwing them on a website. So I presented the findings of this small questionnaire survey at the Amical conference just a few months ago. And one of the problems they face is a simple lack of technical expertise. The 7 institutions planning ETD programs in particular suffer from this problem. Now, some of the better funded libraries have lent out personnel, but help is certainly something that Consortia and others could do. So I'm looking at you, John, and those that are consultants. This is the place to go. They need help, technical expertise. And hopefully some of them have money. I would suggest not going to Iraq or Afghanistan at the moment. Only 4 institutions require a standard format, like a PDF-A. And 6 out of 9 institutions continue to print and bind theses as a form, and they've said this is as a form of preservation. So I think that's indicative of the idea that truly we are moving the idea is that we're moving print into an electronic document. There isn't a thought that an ETD really can be something much more robust than just a printed volume. But what I really get a little frustrated with is the accessibility. There's some glimmers of hope, but some interesting things that I found out here. So 6 out of 9 libraries with an ETD program generally release their ETDs for public consumption, and a 7th library releases them after an embargo, so that's pretty good. But there's some issues with things like copyright. Number one is the education of students on their copyright and the copyright of others. Only 3 institutions indicate that they provide mandatory workshops for their students, or graduate students, on copyright. The rest simply leave this up to the advisor. Maybe they have fantastic advisors, I don't know. But there's not an emphasis on training or teaching students about what copyright is, what their rights are, and what the rights of others are when it comes to intellectual property. Now, one institution reports that they are aware of a student employing a Creative Commons license, and one institution reports that they actively discourage the use of Creative Commons licenses. I won't mention which one that is, but you can ask me later. AMICAL ETDs can be challenging to find. Well, 3 institutions do include their ETDs in a nation or national or statewide or other consortial repository, but you will not find AMICAL ETDs in large thesis repositories like the NDLTD or OATD or even ProQuest's dissertations and theses database. They're just not there. So I think there's a lot of work to do. These are American institutions on an American model of education, but the understanding of what the possibility for an ETD is just not there yet. So future research. This is really just finding out, what's the state of the programs that are out there. Certainly, we need to ask these questions Europe and Asia and Africa on a much larger scale, obviously. But some of the things that we can ask, and we need to identify is there actually a rise in media-rich works that print cannot accommodate? And if there is, how rapid is this change occurring? And if not, why not? Why are students and their supervisors producing the age-old print thesis rather than exploring media-rich formats? There may be very good reasons for that, depending on the discipline. And the other question is, do people have concerns about preservation, storage, and an institution's ability to produce this type of work at all? These are the types of questions I think we need to be asking, and not just in the United States or of American institutions, but across Asia and Africa and the Middle East and Europe. So, and South America and the rest of the world. Jeez, can I fit every continent in here? So I think that there's many questions to ask. This just gives a little bit of a window into one sliver. Some of it is alarming, but there is some hope there. So I think I'll leave questions to the end unless people have quick questions now, but I want to turn time over to Matt. Anybody have questions? Good. Okay, good. Perfect. Any questions?
Hi, James. Thanks for that. I just wondered if I assume that each university awards their own theses, their own PhDs, and whether they follow any US guidelines or policy around thesis submission processes. Is there any consistency in anything that they do across the international universities?
No. The answer to that is really no. These are really independent institutions. Some of them I think 1 or 2 of them may have parent institutions in the United States, but that's really it. So no, they don't.
I just wanted to ask about copyright. With American institutions abroad, presumably they have to follow the copyright rulings of the countries that they're in. So that would actually mean that if you had a copyright teaching program, it would obviously have to be very specifically tailored to the country and the institution. There was no way that could be in any way sort of globalized, as it were.
That's true. I mean, really, these institutions need to tackle them on their own. And what I've found in discussion with my colleagues in these institutions is that they do follow the copyright in the nation in which they reside, but they also follow U.S. copyright. So it can be really. So, for example, the American University of Sharjah will follow American copyright. Where it infringes on UAE copyright, then they'll follow UAE copyright. Otherwise, they try to maintain both, and that can be very problematic.
I was going to say at Texas A&M in Doha, Qatar,
Yeah.
we dealt with that very situation. Hi, sorry. At Texas A&M in Doha, Qatar, that's a very large and growing campus for our engineering program. They actually follow U.S. copyright law by declaration of the ruler of the country that set up Education City.
Yeah.
And so it's like they're in the embassy or something. So I think there could be a contractual preemption to the premise that you do follow national treatment, the copyright.
Yeah.
So that's made it a lot easier for us.
Yeah, and the Middle Eastern countries are generally like that. The ruler, when it comes to American institutions.
Just to clarify, the institutions in the Amical group are not affiliated with American campuses. They're independent.
Yeah, they generally are. There is one specific one I know of has an American campus. Yeah, but yes, they're independent. Hence why Texas A&M is not a member of Amical. Yeah. Good. Okay. Matt, it's all you.